What's up, everybody?
Hi,
How's it going over there?
everyone. Jake, it looks like you kind of struggled there for a second.
I did. The can was weirdly, I don't know, tinny, if that's a thing. But maybe it applies.
Sure.
What kind of beer? What are you drinking for this episode?
Well, the name fits the episode quite a bit. The picture on the can does not at all. So we'll just disregard the picture. But
Okay.
I'm drinking from 903 Brewers. It's a beer called Whoa, What a Night.
Perfect. That's awesome.
And it's like it's woe as in, oh, woe is me. So it's not even like a happy woe, which is still very fitting because what a night.
Things go awry.
But it's a black lager. 903 Brewers, they make pretty good beer down here, so highly recommend them.
Okay. Very cool. I have one that... So I planned to look for a beer that was Comet related, obviously.
I tried that too.
And I couldn't find one, but then I came across this one, which is the most scientific and physics related beer I've ever seen. So it's from the Equilibrium Brewing Company in Middletown, New York. Probably Middleton, New York, if you're cool. I'm not. And it's called, so I had to look it up because it's a weird, like, symbols, right? It's called dc over dt. It's an equation, like a math equation. And so DC, and it's founded on their website. It says, so it's a rate equation referring to the decrease in concentration of a reaction with time. dc dt is the most technologically advanced double IPA that they have ever made. And it utilizes new hardware in unique ways to bring you a beer that's the same. No, don't care about any of that stuff. Introduces max fluxes into a volume control. It's a bunch of stuff basically saying it has to do with the concentration of things mixing together and the rate at which it dilutes itself. And I felt like that kind of has to do with two different things interacting, and
I feel like that's very fitting as well. Bravo to you and I finding two very relevant beers to a movie that I feel not a lot of people have seen, and that's a shame because holy shit. But we'll get into that.
Yeah. Before we do that, let's check in on the movie draft. I am still in the lead. So far, have the highest grossing movie of 2024. Sounds like it's Dune Part 2 is tracking for only around 700 to 720 million. Probably won't hit $1 billion. I wonder what movie this year, if any, will get to $1 billion, because it seems the last couple of years there's been one or two.
Yeah, and you've had them all. So
yeah, both times. So yeah, I don't know. We have a couple, I guess, that have their predecessors have been over $1 billion. Joker being one of those, which you have this year. We'll see if the second one holds up. But yeah, right now, I've had a lot more movies come out. That's part of the main thing. But the rating and box office are mine. My box office trend is exactly what my trend was last time. So hopefully I maintain it, and I'm not in the negative on the Rotten Tomatoes thing, but I am losing that at the moment. So
all right,
we'll see where it goes from here.
It's still early.
I was gonna say Ghostbusters just came out and people seem mid about it. I haven't seen it or heard anything much about it, but it sounds like it's not great. Early hype for Civil War and the Fall Guy seemed pretty good though, so we'll see how those end up being.
Yeah, I'm still far more excited about the Fall Guy than I am Civil War.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. There's something about that. I just can't get on board with Civil War. Like every time I've seen the trailer, there's people in the theater around me that have all gotten like, ooh. And I'm still like,
Doesn't connect.
I'm not, yeah. I'm still
Okay.
going to go see it. But I'm like, I don't know. Similar vibes that I had when Killers of the Flower Moon, the trailers started coming out for that. I kind of just have that like, this one might not be for me. But time will tell. So.
Yeah, the thing that's tempering my excitement the most, I think, is somebody online said, I don't even know, it might be hearsay, but it was enough to freak me out, is that apparently Alex Garland said at one point that it's a spiritual predecessor or some sort of relationship with his movie Men, which is the only movie of his that I did not care for, pretty significantly didn't care for. So hopefully it's not, or hopefully that doesn't matter. I don't really know what's going to be, but we'll see what happens there.
Yeah, I never watched Men.
Don't bother. Weird. What new things have you seen lately? Anything?
Yeah, I watched a few things. One was one that you had already watched that I ended up watching just kind of out of like, well, I had nothing else to watch, got tired of scrolling through Netflix trying to find something, so I just decided to watch American Nightmare. That 3-part series that's on Netflix. I'm not gonna spoil this little mini series for people, but it definitely just continued to add fuel to my fire of distrust for so many people out there that you're supposed to be able to trust, but this definitely made me very like, are you fucking kidding me kind of mentality. But it was very intriguing. Crazy story. Definitely recommend it. I'm sure millions of people have already watched it. If you haven't, you should. It will make you mad, but like, it not a regretful mad. Like you're just gonna be like, what the fuck? But
I'm pretty sure it was on Netflix. You should know, if you try to Google American Nightmare, there are about 1,000 different things out there called American Nightmare over the years. My wife, she was like, hey, you should download American Nightmare, this thing that came out last year. I was like, okay. And so I go looking for it and ran into that problem that there's a million things called American Nightmare. And then she's like, no, it's from 2023. I'm like, okay. And I download this documentary about, it's a WWE wrestling documentary about Cody Rhodes, Dusty Rhodes' son, called American Nightmare. It's from 2023. And then I was like, I did it as a joke, but then I was like, I also want to watch that. So I'll watch it.
That's kind of awesome.
So yeah, not that one. The Netflix,
right. The Netflix one
is the one you want.
And then I saw a movie that kind of was like low key marketed, but not very well, I feel like. I saw a movie called Out of Darkness. It's about early man, like this small group of, I think there's 5 of them in this tiny little tribe. They find a new world, new land to explore and try and make a life out. And it's not easy for them. I will put it that way.
As most things in like the Stone Age weren't.
Very interesting movie. I felt bad for it because it was marketed as pure horror. Like straight up, oh, there's monsters in this movie. Like there's an evil in this movie. It's not a spoiler, but people, it's not a scary movie. It's just an interesting story.
I wondered what you would say if you could like set the record straight or actually get the marketing right, how you would market it as, or let people know.
I would have just marketed it as what the movie actually is, which is this tribe just trying to figure out scary new things. And at that time, every new thing is scary. So that's where
is it like survivalist, like The Edge?
Yeah, kind of. Interesting movie. I found it very entertaining. I think it was crazy. They made a completely new language for it, so it's not English. Yeah,
Wow.
and props to the cast for really like going all in with this language. I found it entertaining. I thought it was an interesting little movie. It wasn't the best one out there, but it was entertaining and interesting. So
Okay.
I would recommend checking it out. And then just with all the prep work that we've been doing for, last
Mm-hmm.
week and all that going into it
Yeah.
and prepping for all these other episodes, I kind of needed something just kind of like stupid and just like I need something new, dumb, and that's
Mm-hmm.
exactly what I got. So I watched Strays from 2023, the
Okay.
Will Ferrell and Jamie Foxx dog movie.
Talking dogs. Yeah.
Yeah,
R-rated comedy
R
talking
rated,
dogs.
hard R. The trailer hilarious. The
Mm-hmm.
movie kind of burns you out on the joke really, really fucking fast.
Okay.
I didn't hate it. It was still like, I still chuckled throughout it. But Jake, I think I have a hot take
Mm-hmm.
towards you.
I love hot
Or
takes.
not towards you, but
Okay.
I know you're a big fan of this guy. But I kind of feel like Will Forte
Yeah.
is what ruins that movie.
Oh no.
I have learned over the past less than a year or whatever, I am not
Mm-hmm.
a Will Forte fan.
That's fair. That's definitely fair.
And
I don't think he's for everybody by any means.
I have been so kind of like sad and bummed to tell you that I tried watching Last Man on Earth,
Yeah.
and I could not get into that show either. I was
Oh
like, I
no.
think it's just Will Forte that I'm not like on board
Yeah.
with. So sorry, Jake. I mean, Strays has some funny lines and dialogue and
Mm-hmm.
some good old Will Ferrell style humor just in dog form. So if you want something
Yeah.
dumb and that's just like mindless, it's not the worst out there.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I'm sorry, Jake. It's like, oh, buddy.
Okay. That's totally fair. I don't blame you at all. But I do wonder if I watch it, I'll be like, well, Will Forte was the best part of that whole
I could
movie.
see you saying that, but I could also see because you surprise me sometimes with that, where you're like, actually, that one
Yeah.
wasn't quite there for me. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
but it had some funny moments that made me chuckle. But I did find it kind of well. I think the gimmick, the idea of the gimmick, and the minute long trailer they had released, it's kind of like the length of that joke. It kind
Yeah.
of like runs out pretty quick. But yeah,
Peter's out.
yeah,
Okay. That's fair.
yeah.
Interesting.
What'd you watch, Jake?
Is that all?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I watched Jake Johnson's first movie that he wrote and directed, Self Reliance.
Oh, okay.
You know, Jake Johnson from New Girl
Yeah.
fame. He wrote and directed his first movie with Anna Kendrick in it, and it's called Self Reliance. I think it's on Hulu. I don't quite remember, but it's a really interesting concept about this guy in like modern day Los Angeles who gets asked if he'd participate in like an ancient game where he will be tracked down by hunters who want to kill him, but if he can survive for 30 days, then he wins $1 million. And he thinks that he like discovers a loophole where hunters won't kill him if he's with another person, but it's a lot harder than he thinks it'll be to get people to stay with him 24/7.
Okay.
And I really enjoyed it. I thought it was definitely clever. I wouldn't say it's the best thing in the world, but I think it's really good and really interesting and has more heart to it overall than you think it will going into it.
Okay.
So I've always loved him as an actor, but now I'm pretty psyched to see where his career goes as a filmmaker from here. I think it was a strong start for sure.
All right.
And then I watched Anyone But You, the Glenn Powell, Sydney Sweeney rom-com
That's
from
like
last year.
shocking everyone that has even made me think maybe I should have drafted that fucking movie because it's like the surprise hit of the year so far. That one?
Yeah, it's a pretty big deal. And it's like having people believe in rom-coms again, basically. that the rom-coms are back, and it was definitely cute. It works for sure, and I haven't really seen anything that Sydney Sweeney has done before, and didn't really know why everybody was kind of obsessed with her. She's kind of weird looking and kind of good looking. It's confusing for most of it. Well, just in general, that's just her face all the time. But Glenn Powell is impossibly handsome all the time. So I don't know what that says about me, but they both do, I think, a good job of being funny and cute. And it was interesting watching it because we did our nudity episode not that long ago, and Sydney Sweeney, I think, is famous for being naked in a lot of stuff, but also there's quite a bit of nudity in this movie. But it was very interestingly balanced. Like there's just as much, if not more, male nudity, at least partial nudity, and there is female nudity in it. And also, I'm pretty sure Sydney Sweeney is a producer on it. So for her to be in charge of the movie and then also have herself get naked, I think it has a different sort of feels different for sure. So I thought it was funny. I laughed out loud. If you see it, which I think you should, it's a fun movie to watch. The old man on the plane is my spirit animal and the funniest part of the movie. So look out for that guy.
The old man on the plane.
And then the old man on the plane. You'll know him when you see him. I'll tell you that much. And then, like you, we've been prepping so much stuff, and I've had so many serious 2023 movies to watch and all this stuff that I kind of need something new and dumb. And it's actually came out a long time ago, and mostly because my wife said, "Hey, we should watch this." And I was like, "Yeah, okay, whatever." I watched I Feel Pretty, the Amy Schumer movie from I don't know how long ago. It's like it's like the reverse shallow Hal, where she gets a head injury and then I didn't hate it as much as I anticipated, because I don't really like Amy Schumer's comedy. I don't think she's that very funny, but I thought that the emotional parts of this movie were much better done by her than actually the comedy parts of it. And I was interesting. I was like, oh, I know exactly where this movie's going to go. I know all the tropes they're going to touch on. And the point is that she thinks that she's not very pretty, but then has a head injury and then thinks that she's like gorgeous, and then how her life is different because of that. So I expected all of these like tropes and cliches and things, and it was weirdly kind of refreshing. That's partly why I liked it, is that most people weren't like super mean to her, like she was ugly and stuff. Like there wasn't a whole lot of like animosity, and really none of the men were like super superficial with her. And so they're actually there's actually a love story. One of them just falls in love with her and doesn't care how she looks at all. And so it was really kind of sweet overall. And I liked the moral of the story, which is basically that if you're confident in who you are, that's really all you need. There are things about yourself you can't change. There's things about yourself that you can change, but probably shouldn't change. And just be confident in who you are. And so I overall was shocked that I liked it, but I liked it quite a bit.
I haven't seen it for a long time. Yeah, I think it's just Amy Schumer. Like, no offense, Amy Schumer fans or Amy.
Yeah.
I rewatched Trainwreck.
Amy, we know you're listening. So
right. Yeah, when we were prepping for back when we were doing the romantic movies and stuff, I was like, oh, I haven't watched Trainwreck for a while, so I rewatched that and was like, oh, I don't like this movie as much as I did the first time I saw it. I was like, I think it.
That's actually, we watched Trainwreck after, and I was like, I remember liking Trainwreck more than I do right now. Like a lot of the jokes didn't land for me like they did before, which was weird.
Yeah, I found myself just being like, she's talking way too much. Why? Like, the joke was already done. You can stop.
Yeah.
But we digress.
But Roadhouse has just come out.
Yeah.
And would you say we're Roadhouse fans? Like we did the Roadhouse episode where we both watched it, and we were very curious because it's kind of a cult classic that people love. And we were trying to figure out why. I think we came away from it with a respect for why people like it, but may not love it necessarily ourselves.
I would say that we did walk away from it being fans, especially
Yeah,
because it's such a
I liked it.
weird movie. Like, it's so unique, especially for the time that it came out. It's very specific for that time it came out.
Yeah.
I would say we are fans. I know I have definitely become a bigger fan of it since we did that episode, because it's just like it's just always there, right? You always find yourself
Yeah.
kind of thinking just random moments of like, God, it'd be cool to watch that throat rip again. Like, okay.
Every time I like pinch my finger in the door or something, I'm like, pain don't hurt. Pain don't hurt, man. Just always remember.
When people get like irate at or in public, I have found myself a couple times of just being like, just be nice. Like, just be nice.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Until it's time to not be nice.
I would say
Yeah,
that you
it
and
is.
I did become fans of it.
It is a very unique movie, and that's kind of the main thing that I was remembering going into watching the remake is that it's, I think we talked about in that episode, it's a dude's movie. It's very action heavy, but also very romantic and kind of sensual at times. And also there's just weird things that happens. It's a strange kind of movie that is hard to put your finger on it.
Yeah.
And so it's hard to remake it. I think probably people would say it's an unnecessary remake. And I would probably agree with that.
I would agree with that statement. It's kind of funny how I think had we not watched the original and kind of like gone into it the way we did, I probably would have been on the I don't really care if they remake this one, because I had never really watched it, seeing clips and stuff growing up, and that was pretty much the gist. After becoming a fan of watching the original, I was very much on the like, why are you bothering to remake this? You're not going to recreate what made this movie so great. It's this like 80s style Western.
Yeah.
Just not in the Old West. That's what it's a Western movie. It's basic. It's a spaghetti Western. It's the man with no name. Like, it's
coming
fantastic.
into town, cleaning it up, and riding off into the sunset.
Move on in the sunset. So I know I still love this interaction between you and I when I finally watched the trailer for the remake. And texting you and being like, how have we not talked about how horrible the remake looks? And you responded with, I'm excited for it.
It was ... I'm kind of excited for it.
Right. I think you posted it on the stories a while back. We'll probably have to take a screenshot and repost it.
I'll find it.
And I remember, like, I was on my lunch at work when I had texted you that and was like, oh no. So I just sent you a couple,
because I'm interested in Conor McGregor and Jake Gyllenhaal, and the trailer made it look like the fights especially were done pretty good and brutal, and that's most of the reason why I was intrigued by it, for sure.
Yeah. And so it was very much like, I think we both knew we're obviously going to watch this.
Yeah.
Especially having done the episode. And for those that listened or watched, like, you guys know, we came away from it just kind of, how did we end up being fans? This is so weird, because we mocked a lot of it, but you're a fan of it. You're like on board with everything they do in it. So remake releases. And I can't believe I watched it before you. I thought you would have. Granted, you had like more important things going on. So
yeah, a little bit.
So that busy. Makes sense. I put that movie on and was like, all right, let's do this. Hit play. I'm watching it. And about halfway through, I was like, I don't hate this, but I don't know how I feel about this. And when it ended, I've kind of am still in that mindset of like, I didn't hate it near as much as I fully expected to.
Yeah.
And that's weird to me, because I was like, I should tear this movie apart. But you know what sold the movie, what made the remake quote
but
unquote work for me.
yeah.
They leaned into the
Mhm.
idea of like the tongue-in-cheek stuff. The girl at the bookstore flat out calls this whole thing like, oh, it's a Western. Oh, she even read
Yeah.
like the back of a Western book and it's the exact same storyline as the movie.
Yeah, a little novella or something.
Yeah, so I respect the tongue-in-cheek thing. I thought some
Mhm.
of the jokes were funny. I also thought some of the jokes were like, that's terribly timed and makes no sense why you would say that.
Mhm.
But it has some faults. And I feel like the faults I have with it,
Uh-huh.
you will share with me.
Probably. Probably. Uh, I, but then my number one bullet was there are extremely questionable physics in this movie. And then my second bullet was the music in this bar sucks. Because that's all true.
I didn't hate the music, although I did question why are these bands still playing when guys are
Yeah.
like tearing into the fucking chicken wire. Why is the
Mhm.
band still playing when the bar has emptied out? They are still playing on
They're
stage.
there to do a job. They're gonna do
Apparently.
it no
I
matter what.
agree with
I
you.
also wrote that the bikers in 2024 are very dorky and uncool. Like there's just a bunch of preppy douchebags in
You're
like polos and
the yellow
Hondas.
polo.
Yeah, like Honda Cruiser bikes. I'm like, you are not bikers. Like you're not a biker
Like
gang in Miami or wherever you are. The Keys, Florida Keys.
the
So
one
it's not the same.
that's like super polite and always being like, "Oh, hi, Dalton. Oh, sorry,
Yeah,
man. Oh,
like he
hi."
wants to be his friend. He's like, I just work here, guy.
Yeah. The physics, I agree completely on you. I don't want to like spoil this, so I
Yeah,
won't. But there is a certain action sequence that
with a boat.
happens later. Yeah, the boat.
Yeah, there's a jump to a boat, and it's like I've seen better jumps to things in Fast and Furious movies than I have seen in this. Uh,
Um,
I was I was also annoyed that the bar is called the Roadhouse,
thank
and
you.
they make a point of clarifying that a couple of times and like joking about it. They're like, "No, it's the Roadhouse," and I think they just wanted to put the word Roadhouse in the movie a bunch
Yeah.
instead of like the Double Deuce or some other bar name like the original
So
one, and it was
they
very
thought they
weird.
were being funny and clever and like, ooh, look, Double Deuce, because it's the name of the store that's right next to the bookstore.
Oh, I didn't even notice
Yeah.
that.
Which when I saw that, I was like, wait, oh. And then it's the Roadhouse, and I was like, God damn it. Like, you
Yeah.
were doing great with the tongue-in-cheek stuff with the Western, but why'd you change the name of the bar? Like,
Hmm.
I get that the name of the bar isn't a big part of the original,
Yeah.
but why'd you change the name of the bar? I was I was like kind of just because that whole opening, you're just kind of like it felt like they were trying to get their feet too. Like,
Yeah.
did it feel that way to you where it was like
A
they
little bit.
didn't even know what like are we actually going with this? Are we doing this? And then it finally
Yeah.
like
Is this serious and gritty or is it
yeah,
serious and silly at the same time?
I will tell you, Jake, his
Hmm.
first time going in the bar, when there
Uh-huh.
were no drug deals, when there were no horrible shenanigans going on, no grossness for him to like eyeball and just watch in the quiet and just be,
Hmm.
and just clock everything that he's going to have to clean up. I was bummed because that's one of my favorite sequences in the original is when he just walks around, clocks everything, and then they have their little staff meeting, and he's like,
Yeah.
"You're fired. You're fired. You're fired." Like,
Yeah. Yeah. Seeing how the staff is enabling it or part
yeah,
of it,
I
part
was
of the problem.
I was kind of bummed that that's not in it. Not to sorry for kind of spoiling some stuff, but not.
Yeah. He doesn't really head the crew in the same way either, where
Yeah.
he just kind of there's just kind of like a montage of these people getting better at being bouncers, but he doesn't like sit them down or train them in the same way.
But I did keep thinking one thing. Jake. I was like, man, I bet this movie saving grace for Jake right now is Jake Gyllenhaal is fucking jacked.
Yeah, it is. It is. It was, well, Jake Gyllenhaal and Conor McGregor both. I think that they were the best part of the movie. I was not disappointed by them at all. I think Jake Gyllenhaal being jacked is a huge thing, but also I think he is a great Dalton because he has that kind of disarming charm that you need and that Swayze had, and he does it as well. But then he also could obviously kill you with his hands,
right?
And I think that that's great. I did think it was funny in the opening when he goes up against Post Malone and he has the most dad bod ever.
Man, fuck this guy, fuck him, I ain't fucking fighting him. Yeah.
And then Conor McGregor was like made for that role. I think he was the highlight of the whole movie. He completely was a great. I like Conor McGregor mostly because I see him for what he is, which is the heel of the UFC, and he leans into it and he sells fights for that reason.
I'm not gonna lie, Jake. When he finally showed up on screen, I mean, his opening scene, I was just kind of like, well, that's an entrance. I won't tell you guys why. But it's quite the entrance. But from that moment and every scene he had, when he walks, I'm not going to lie, I could not stop laughing. Every time. I was like, and then you posted the fucking meme of like,
oh, it's so memeable.
And I started laughing my ass off at that too, because I can't get over the like, hey.
Yeah, I really wonder, like, he looks a lot bigger than he used to. I don't know if he's like actually bigger or his traps are bigger or if he just walks a certain way.
Or if he's like, just if that was a character decision because it's his first movie. I don't know, but it was funny as shit. I hope that was the point because I could not stop laughing. When he walks in the bar with the fucking golf club, I was like, he looks so awkward swinging this thing because he's so like no-necked and boxy. Like,
I loved it.
Please don't kill me, Conor McGregor. I found it entertaining. It entertained me. But I didn't hate the remake of Roadhouse. I thought I was going to. I did not.
What did you think? My biggest disappointment was the lack of a Wade character.
Yeah.
I know that Wade was our favorite.
I shared that with you. I was like, where the hell is the friend? Where is the mentor? He needs that.
It seems like they tried to replace him with the little girl that he talked to like 3 times, and that's like the heart that he's like, oh, you messed with her, now I'm gonna actually go off on you, kind of thing. I was like, it doesn't land the same.
It doesn't land the same. I really missed the Wade character, but it wasn't my biggest gripe. You know what my biggest gripe was?
What?
There's no fucking polar bear in this movie.
Oh, I was going to say the opposite. Well, not the opposite, but that's true. I was going to say there's no throat rip.
And there's no throat rip, but I am more bummed out with the polar bear. A
polar bear fell on me.
I fucking love the polar bear. It's such a pointless thing, and that's why I love it so much. They could have at least done like a shark or like a sad like swordfish.
It seems like a great thing to just throw a nod in.
It would have been great, but it is.
Have Conor McGregor comment on it or something.
I thought it was all right. I ended up rating it on IMDb. What would you? I'm curious what you would rate it.
I'd give it a 6.5.
God, you and I are meant to be movie buddies.
Soulmates, movie
soulmates. Thank you. Yeah, I got like the notification, like rate this movie, and I was like, it did entertain me more than I expected. It was not for a remake, remake of a cult classic. I was like, the nods they have in it, you get. Like, you can, I get it. It's fun.
And the fight choreography and fight editing is really well done. Like, there's no, like, MCU cutting away as the hits land. It's, like, pretty you see everything and it's all sold very, very
Yeah.
well. I definitely loved the
Although
fights.
I wasn't a big fan when they go to the point of view fight.
Yeah.
A couple times they do that. I wasn't a fan of that, but not
There's some
enough to be
foggy.
like, God.
Yeah.
It was still fun. It's still funny to see Jake Gyllenhaal, who when we were young, I mean, we knew him from like Bubble Boy and October
Yeah.
Sky, and
Oh yeah.
and now he's Dalton, and he's jacked like crazy, and he's beaten the snot out of Conor McGregor. It's
Mhm.
kind of a like, this is throwing me for a loop, man.
Yeah. Yeah, he's had a arc for sure.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'd recommend it. It's streamable for sure.
Definitely. I'm kind of shocked that it just went to the streaming, because
Yeah.
having seen, I mean, all the thoughts that I've seen on it have been kind of surprisingly positive. Everyone's coming out, or that I've seen, been like, yeah, it wasn't the best, but it was entertaining. This was fun. I'm kind of like, I can't help but think that the decision to only release it on Prime was a like, everyone's going to hate this movie, we'll just stream it. Like, that'll be the saving grace.
Yeah. Yeah, I know the director, Doug Liman, who did Edge of Tomorrow and The Wall and American Made and a bunch of movies, Mr. and Mrs. Smith. He was pissed when Amazon said they were just putting it on streaming, and he boycotted the premiere and a bunch of stuff. He was like, we made a theater movie, it should be in the theaters and all that stuff.
It would have been fun to watch in the theater, I think.
Yeah.
I think it wouldn't have been like the smash box office hit.
Sure.
But having seen people's reactions be pretty positive, I think it would have been successful. So, hard to tell, but I did not mind it. I'm still shocked that I'm saying that. But
yeah, it's nice going into it. A movie you expected to hate, not hating it. That's
right,
good.
right.
Before getting to the episode, we have merch. If you want any merch, we have stuff. I may or may not have refreshed the merch store by now, so there may or may not be new stuff out there. Trying to figure all that out, but it should be good to go soon. And then, of course, last episode we did a Movie Boners Awards. I'd like to tell you something unique and hilarious that happened, but we haven't recorded it yet because we're still trying to watch 2023 movies. But it was fun, and huge shout out to all of the presenters that attended and did little clips for us. That was very nice of them. They're very cool.
Thank you, everyone.
So go check that out. Check them out. They were very, very gracious, and that was so much fun. And then next episode, most importantly, since you watched this movie tonight, Coherence, and you're ready to go for next week, next episode, whenever we do it, go make sure April 21st is coming up. Get ready for Fog Day. First annual Fog Day.
We declared it last year, late in the year, but we declared it last year.
Yeah.
Fog Day is happening. We expect to see pirates. And
yeah. Lots of fog. So watch John Carpenter's The Fog from 1980, whatever it was, and be ready for next episode.
Yes. All right.
Okay. So I think obviously we'll talk about this movie without spoilers for a little bit so that you can know if you haven't watched it yet, if you want to.
Which you should.
We have to get into deep spoilers to even talk about much of anything. Because it's a really good movie, but there's a lot that happens, and a lot of it, everything matters, and I don't want to spoil any of it for you. So, what did you think of Coherence from
All right.
2015?
So you had seen it before I did, and you had mentioned it on the show, and it kind of piqued my interest because there's been a couple movies that you've brought up over the last almost 4 years. Side note, almost 4 years. Holy shit. Go us. Thank you, everyone, for sticking around. This is awesome. You're awesome.
Yeah.
Moving on. And I was watching it, I forget which episode it was, but I went on this huge, just nonstop new things watch fest. It was kind of ridiculous. But I came across Coherence and was like, oh, Jake, this one that Jake mentioned, he said it was like kind of like The Invitation. And that movie kind of scares the shit out of me, but in like a good way because it's such a disturbing movie. I gotta watch this one. And I know I briefly told you like I loved it because I did. I'm so excited to get into it, but dude, when everything starts like when they start telling you how everything is unfolding, I kind of have to refrain until we get into like the spoiler portion. But there's a moment where I was like, holy fucking shit. It was like,
yeah. I had that moment at least once as well, probably twice.
And that movie has become like it just lives in my head now. It's up there with like The Empty Man, where I'm just like, I can't stop watching these fucking like this movie has become a beast in my head.
I knew it was a huge success and that you loved it when like 2 or 3 weeks later after you had said, yeah, I saw it, I really, really liked it. Then you posted in the stories, you're like, okay, guys, seriously, I can't stop thinking about these movies that Jake told me to watch. The Empty Man and Coherence. I just love them for some reason.
I'm like, how did Jake manage to pluck out these movies? Out of the millions of movies that are out there, you found these two movies that no one has heard of, no one's watched. They're very, very tiny audiences, but they deserve bigger audiences than like 2/3 of the shit that's coming out in mainstream. And I'm like, how you found these is amazing. And I'm a little resentful because I'm like, I feel I watch just as many, if not more movies than Jake does. And he hasn't told me that any of the movies I've recommended to him live in his head. But he's got these two that are just constantly there now. And I'm like, sly bastard. That's sly.
You know how I avoid it is that you recommend things and then I don't get around to watching them. So I don't have the opportunity.
But Coherence is, I've watched it so many times now. It's ridiculous. Like, not even for prep on the episode, just like I was at work and I had a coworker asking me about like any movie you should recommend. And I told him like Coherence, just go on Prime, Coherence, watch it. Like, don't look it up. Don't read anything on it. You'll ruin the movie for you. Just go watch this movie. I don't know if you did or not, but that day I came home and it was like, well, I'm going to watch it again. So I watched it again. And every time I watch it, I've been like, people have been complaining that there's no original films coming out. And I'm like, this movie is the original film I think people need to see. Like, this is, you want a breath of fresh air. You want something that's going to take you off guard. It doesn't try to be perfect, which I think is what kind of makes it pretty damn perfect.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Goddamn, Jake, how you found this movie, dude. It's so fucking good.
Yeah, I don't even know how I came across it. And I kind of started watching it randomly and then kind of had the same feeling as soon as I watched it. I was like, oh, this is interesting. Like, I'm really into this. And then it was just interesting for a good while. And then things start happening and things start turning. I was like, oh dear God, this is incredibly fascinating and riveting. And I am all about this movie now. And so I'm so glad you liked it. I think if anybody hasn't watched it and wants to watch it, like you said, it's on Amazon Prime. If you have that, it's included for free. It's also on Tubi and Peacock and Pluto TV and Plex for free, but I wouldn't recommend commercials. So if you have Amazon or if you want to rent it for like $3 online, highly recommend it. Definitely worth checking out.
Yeah.
And it's crazy. I feel like it I hadn't heard about it. It must have come out pretty recently. I can't believe 2013 was over 10 years ago
I
now, a
know.
decade ago. That's wild. And it is a little movie. It was made with an estimated budget of $50,000, filmed over 5 nights in the director's house, and the director James Ward Byrkit, Byrkit. Uh, Interestingly, prior to this film, his primary credits were as a storyboard artist, and
Mhm.
he worked on a ton of Gore Verbinski movies, from 3 different Pirates of the Caribbean movies, and Rango and Mouse Hunt, and then The Amazing Spider-Man 2 and Baby Driver. And so it's so interesting. He just came up with this story and the idea, and wanted to kind of test the idea of shooting a movie without a crew or a script. And so he just shot it in his own house. And because he didn't really have a script, he intentionally cast people that were great improvisational actors,
Mhm.
and kind of just gave them the general direction and general motivation, and enough story to keep them going, and let them go. And they improvised a ton of the movie, which is crazy to me as
That's one of
well.
my favorite things when I started like learning about the making of this movie and doing like the research part. Um,
Mhm.
one of the writers like secretly was also cast so that he could help kind of steer everyone back into the right direction for, hey, here's the goal of the scene, go do your thing. But the actors were so into it that at one point he had to, I don't want to spoil who it is quite yet because it's still all spoiler stuff. But after
Yeah, I
a
don't even
like
know. I can't wait till we get there.
after a if I remember reading right, it was like a 2 hour 2 hour argument. This guy
Okay.
had to finally be like, guys, like we need to let, let's move on. But the actors were so
Yeah.
into it, which after I found out that like the script didn't really exist, it was just
Mhm.
here's the situation, here's the goal for the scene, and it was shot uh, in order, so it wasn't all jumbled around and stuff.
Yeah.
But for that crew or that little acting ensemble, 5 people to be that like dedicated to it, and their performances felt so real. And after learning all this stuff
Mhm.
and rewatching it again, it was very much like, holy shit, this is like this. You can tell it's acting, but this is great acting
Yeah.
because I 100% believe that these guys have been this small group for years.
Mhm.
They know the ins and outs of each other and have for a
Mhm.
long time. And they're being put in a situation that's really like high stress. They know how they're going to each react, and they're all trying to like combat each other and argue just like friends tend to do when things get heated. It was very
Yeah.
like, this is unbelievable.
Yeah, and able to push each other's buttons, and yeah, absolutely. It was so, I think, well acted, because there are so many things where they have kind of different thoughts or conflicting feelings, and you can see it all on
Yeah.
their face. And then for something that was so quickly done, I think it was very well directed, because it holds just long enough on them to fully get the effect of them having a different thought, or realizing something just happened, or pondering something about their own
Right.
internal like struggle. And I was like, wow, this is so impressively done. I'm a huge fan of it for sure.
Yeah. I
So I guess basic summary of the plot to get somebody interested in watching it. It's about 8 friends who are going to have a dinner party, and on the night that Miller's comet is crossing over Earth and passing very close to Earth. And because they're old friends, they have their own drama and baggage and stuff. And it's mostly about the main character, Emily. She is coming to the dinner party and kind of has been struggling to commit with going on a trip with her boyfriend. And that's a big motivator for her. And then weird things happen, and they wonder if it's related to the comet or related to other things that are happening, just
and
libations at the party, things like that.
that's kind
And it
of
gets crazy
where
from
you have
there
to
more and
leave the
more.
summary. Yeah, when I was trying to summarize it for my coworker, I told him like group of friends for like a dinner night kind of thing, get together. There's a comet, you know, so it's kind of like they're doing this for the comet going over. He was like, all right, and I was like, and weird shit kind of starts happening like immediately in the movie. And he was like, "Oh yeah, like what?" I was like,
Open
"Eh,
credit.
no, I'm not going to tell you, dude. You got to just go watch the movie." But I was like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's one of those movies you don't want to over explain, but then you always feel like you're not selling it well enough.
Yeah, I feel
Folks,
like if you tell somebody it's about 8 friends at a dinner party and there's a comet, they're like, "Why the fuck would I watch that?"
and you're like, just trust me on this one.
Yeah.
It's gonna take you
Well,
on a bit of a journey.
I think like you said, comparing it to The Invitation is very good. If you've seen that, it's another underappreciated, underknown gem of a movie, kind of not related to cult or anything like that, but similar, lesser known actors, but very well done, very well edited, and very intense. And then it also reminds me a lot of The Endless, which is another movie we did before, which is about those two brothers and weirdly again cults. But that is also kind of a small movie that gets very intense, very fascinating, and kind of sciency. So it's that's the thing I will say is like there's things that they consider the reasoning for the things that are happening, and it gets kind of sciencey, but you won't be overwhelmed because none of them are scientists or have any idea what's going on.
Right.
So as they try to figure it out, you're trying to figure it out, and I think it's very accessible, but also very fascinating. I think if you're into like puzzles or brain teasers or paradoxes or what's possibly happening, I think you'll really like this movie.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's very, very accessible for wide audience. The science that they kind of bring up a handful of times in the movie, it's not going to make you feel lost. You're not going to be like, I have no clue what the fuck they're talking about, because they literally tell you at the same time, like, they read a fucking definition at one point, and it's like layman's terms definition. So you're not
They're just reading it out of a textbook. They're like, this might be what's happening. But then they also like all argue, like, does that mean that this is happening? They're like, no, it can't be, because then this would happen. And they're all just arguing, and nobody is ever really right. And so it's really more of a thought experiment, I think, than anything else.
Yeah. It's such a crazy movie. Such a crazy movie. I feel like, folks, you need to watch it.
Enough.
I would recommend pausing us here and go watch this movie. It's like not even 2 hours. Enjoy the movie, let it blow your mind, and then come back and we can get into the spoiler area, because there's a lot. There's really no avoiding it.
It's not as complicated as like Tenet, where I'm like, I had to watch it 4 or 5 times to really feel like I understood everything. No. But there are things that after seeing it the first time, I'm like, oh, like you start picking up more on things, or once you know what's happening, then you're like, oh, I should really pay attention to this thing that they're doing, because whenever this happens, something significant happens. So I should really pay attention more. And so when you do, I think you get more out of it on the second watch for sure.
You do,
but you can watch it once and then just come back, and we'll tell you all the stuff you need to know.
We're gonna break it down for you. We're gonna have fun talking about this. We've been wanting to talk about it for a little while now, so pretty excited. Yeah, it's one of those movies where when you go back the second, third, fourth time and rewatch it, you're like, at least for me, I found myself just being, holy crap, this whole movie, it might be like the best example. It might even rival the great M. Night Shyamalan when it comes to a twist in a film. I think it kind of does. I found myself more shocked and kind of blown away. Not just the first time watching it, but every time I've watched it since then, and just being like, this fucking movie is so brilliant because it doesn't rely on the twist at the end, which is like the normal thing.
Right.
Like, everything kicks off with the opening credit. Like, at the beginning of the movie, everything is already in motion. What? Like, and you didn't have a script for this? How do you do this?
Yeah, it's insane. And it does kind of just build on itself over time. But then there are definitely points where there's something that's revealed. And when that's revealed, the way it's done, I do think that it rivals M. Night or any other great twist maker in the sense that it's not really like, it's not like, ta-da, here's the thing. It's just like so slowly done that it just kind of dawns on you as it dawns on the characters, and you're kind of in sync with the movie, it feels like. And so as soon as Emily realizes it, you're like, oh my God, like, is that really, like, it just feels like the whole movie just gets so big all of a sudden and crazy.
I remember the first time I watched it, Jake, I was starting to kind of feel like, I didn't feel like I had to try to figure it out, which was nice.
Yeah.
I was definitely just letting it just, okay, I'm along for the ride. But I had suspicions of a couple things, and I was like, God, that might be a possibility. And one of them was right. And that was the moment that I was like, oh my fucking God. Like, no. And that was that was a moment for me that I was like, yeah, I think this might be a better twist movie without relying on being a twist movie. Like, it literally leaned directly into the story and into just being. I'm like, I know we're in the spoiler part, but I still find myself being like hesitant to say because it was so fun for like some of those reveals because they're not ta-da moments. It's usually like you see it, but no one acknowledges it until later. And the big one for me was involving Hugh when him and Emily are at the table and he's calculating all the different possibilities. And that was the moment where I was like, wait, holy shit. It was like, that means, and then they broke it all down. I was like, no. Like, instant stress for the rest of the movie.
Right. It's so, that's like my favorite thing about it. We need to stop dancing around it and get to spoilers. But before I do that, and before we cut, like, make it a clear cut, that is kind of one of my favorite parts because it feels like things get scary for, like, at that moment. You're like, oh no, I'm not where I'm supposed to be or whatever. But these all people are all your friends also, so it can't be that scary. And so it's such a complicated and interesting thing. We got to get into it. None of that makes any sense. Go watch Coherence. Stop listening to us. Once you have, we're going to get into spoilers right now. So you've been warned. This is the juicy part I'm so excited to get into. And I don't even really know how to get into it. I was like, do we just start at the beginning and go all the way through? Because it does build.
I kind of feel like we just do what we've been doing, where we're just going to talk about the movie and bring up like some of the key scenes or key story moments, character, whatever, like we've been doing. I don't think we have to break it down scene for scene. I do think, though, that we have to start with the opening scene of Emily driving and being on the phone, because it's not like it's such a, how do I the way they start the movie, where you are in the car, it's that like close up shot of Emily. She's on the phone. The phone call's not really like clear, but it like, and it's instant tension. You know, he's like, "Oh, I think we really need to talk before you get to the party." She's like, "Well, why? What's going on?" And he's like, "Well, you know who got invited." And you're like, "Oh God!" Like right out the gate, you're kind of put in an uncomfortable situation. But what got me was like her phone breaks.
Yeah.
And my first initial thought,
Right.
I'll be
The
honest,
screen
my first
cracks
initial thought
entirely.
was like, yeah, I was like, okay, I hope they don't try to force like supernatural weird shit going on in this movie. But her reaction to the phone breaking, where she's like, what the fuck? Oh, whatever. Gets to the party, and then it's like
Yeah.
her saying hi to the group of friends. It totally reminded me of like when we all used to have our group where we'd go to someone's house and everyone would just kind of congregate into the kitchen. You're just chatting it up. Someone
Yeah.
says or does something dumb that someone's going to be like, oh, why the fuck are you doing that? Kind of stuff. Like, luckily we didn't have friends that pulled out a vial of whatever the fuck she had. But,
ketamine and other things. Yeah.
yeah. But I was instantly like, you go from that kind of instant tension in the phone call or in the car with Emily and her boyfriend. And then you're like with the friend group, and she's like, so to everyone here, you know, who's coming to dinner tonight, and you're like, oh, this is where it's going to get weird. But all of that instantly made me like relate to them. And so I felt almost immediately a part of that group. And the camera shots are so close in the group throughout the movie that you constantly feel like the ninth friend. You're the ninth member of this group. And you probably shouldn't be there. Much like all of them.
Yeah, you're very present in the situation with them for sure. And yeah, I definitely instantly felt as soon as she gets there and starts talking to them that it felt very natural and like a very normal conversation. And the fact that her phone randomly broke, she didn't like hide as a reveal later. She's like, a weird thing just happened to me in the car. My phone broke as I was talking on it. And they're like, oh, that's weird. Do you have insurance? And she's like, I don't know. And then it just kind of moves on. But it felt so realistic of the dialogue and stuff. And I think that lends to the improvisational nature of it for sure.
Yeah, 100%. It really did. I love the progression from in the kitchen. They're giving like the hippie friend her, you know, a bunch of shit for her little vial. And then when she's trying to talk about the feng shui and the door that leads to nowhere and all that, I had to laugh because I think every group of friends has that one friend that kind of tiptoes or goes full into like the hippie mentality and into the like the new agey kind of stuff like this. And every group of friend accepts it and kind of rolls their eyes about her and just like, oh, okay, yep, yeah, it's a weird thing, whatever. It felt, I'm telling you, dude, it felt like we were having a group dinner, like with like our old group of friends, with any group of friend. It felt so real, and so many props to the director and writers, and their kind of like secret agent actor, for helping make that feeling very relevant and very, well, not relevant, but very prominent in the movie. Even when they argue later on, it still felt very like, yeah, this is close friends. It's so good.
And the whole dinner conversation is kind of one of my favorite parts. We're all just kind of reconnecting. Some of them haven't seen each other for a while, but some of the best foreshadowing, I think, is the story that they tell. They're like, yeah, it's crazy there's a comet overhead. The last time this happened was in 1923 in Finland. And the fact that both Hugh and Emily knew the story, and Emily kind of takes over and is talking about this woman. She called the police and said that the man in my home is not my husband. Like, you get chills when you're watching it. You're like, well, that's a scary story. And then she's like, because I killed my husband and I know it's not him, but they couldn't arrest him or anything, arrest her or anything. I'm like, that's a scary story, but I don't know how it applies here. And then the more you watch the movie, you're like, whoa, like that's a perfect way to foreshadow it without giving anything away either.
Yeah, there's a lot of moments. Well, okay. There's one specific moment. It's just repeated several times during the first like 2 acts of the film. And the first time I watched it, it was kind of like turning me off a little. Well, not turning me off, but kind of like, okay, they're relying on this a lot. And I can't tell if it's just because it's a low budget film. So they're just like, this is an artistic choice. Maybe I'll get over it later on. Of course, after you finish the movie, you find yourself being like, there's no other way they could have done this. That was perfect. But the hard cuts where there's no like clean transition. It's very dark screen, next scene, dark screen, next scene. They do it several times. And then
and it's not even like super quick. Like there'll
like
be cuts to black, hold for a second, still black, and then it goes to something else. And usually it seems, at least in the beginning, it's like time has passed. Like it's when they go from like the kitchen to the dinner table, or to when, like from that to when Kevin's not there yet and Emily's just talking to everybody, and then suddenly Kevin's there and she's talking to him. Like there's a cut to black in between that. And you're like, oh, time has passed. And that's mostly what you think.
You're like,
but then
we're showing the progression of the
I read a thing where the director said that those cuts to black are intentional and mean something, but he has never said what they really mean.
I feel like it's pretty obvious.
I was going to ask
what those hard cuts mean. And I kind of felt that way after the first time watching it, and then was sold on it completely the second, third, fourth time that I watched this movie. I think we're in the spoiler part, right? We're in the spoiler area. People, seriously, if you haven't,
we're in the spoiler
stopped
part.
us.
If you listen to us talk,
we're in the spoiler. And I'm literally about to spoil, like,
what do you think it means?
The thing. I think we're seeing the different.
Do you think it's
versions.
Jumping realities?
Yeah. Okay. I think we're seeing the 5 or 6 or the 8 groups, really. Or no, it would be the 7 groups. I think we are seeing the 7 groups. I say 7 because one of them is like the control group. I think they are showing us how all the other realities are playing out on the same night, all parallel to each other. And one of the things I read, it's not like super intentional, but it was a fun, we can get away with doing this, is the character of Mike. He's a real actor, obviously, but like from television. He was on Buffy the Vampire Slayer, but they changed that to having him be on Roswell. And oh my god, I just lost her name.
Yeah.
The girlfriend is like, you're not on Roswell. To me, and what I read was like, it's supposed to be a fun little, like, not actually a hint, but kind of a fun little, like, like, could this be? But you don't realize that
in this alternate reality, he was an actor on Roswell. Yeah.
Yeah,
I could see that for sure.
Yeah, I'm completely sold. That's what the hard cuts are, is the different realities that you're gonna be watching intertwine throughout the rest of the movie. That's what you're watching right there.
I agree. I definitely agree.
Good, as you should, because it's the one that makes the most sense, and it's kind of a freaky. I think it amps the intensity of the story up, because at no point are you ever actually positive which group you originally felt connected to. And that's That's a little unnerving.
Kind of the point of the
That's
movie,
a little,
yeah,
ooh.
that you end up getting at.
Kind of the point of the movie. Yeah,
And yeah, I definitely
yeah.
appreciate that because you feel like none of the different realities are significantly different. Like, and so that could be the
Mhm.
case that if you're dropped into any individual conversation, there's I almost said coherence. There's a cohesiveness to their personality and their relationships that kind of generally carries through. That whether even if in one reality the relationship's not as good as another reality, in any given conversation it could be a little bit like heightened or shorter or whatever, a little ruder, but it's the same basic relationship. They're all
Mhm.
basically friends and all basically able to gather for a dinner. And so you don't notice significant differences if you jump from one timeline to another timeline to another timeline. Uh, and I think it's a great little detail, and it adds another layer of depth to the overall story.
Oh yeah. So you want to know who the mole was, the actor? For like,
I've been think I've been trying to figure it out since you mentioned it because I have no idea.
okay.
I want to say Amir.
You are correct.
I was like, I'm pretty sure Hugh is like a legit working actor, and obviously the guy that plays Xander and Buffy is. But I was like, it's either Amir. It's probably not Kevin. And for some reason, I was like, it's definitely a guy. I don't know why I thought that. I was like, it's definitely one of the four
Definitely a
guys.
guy, yeah. Yeah,
That's
Alex
hilarious.
Manugan or Amir. The
Hmm.
guy that played Amir, he's the co-writer on the film, and he was kind of cast as Amir to help steer the situations, and like if a situation kind of drags on a little bit more, he's gonna be the
Yeah,
guy that kind of helps redirect it or rein it in a little bit. And so it's funny
yeah,
after I found that out and
yeah.
then rewatching it again, I watched him to see how he's responding to some of the arguments, to some of the conversations. How does he, when something's directly involving him, how does he gonna like kind of steer his co-stars? And it's funny
Hmm.
watching it because you're like, oh, he's totally like, he'll hint at stuff or he'll mention something again. Oh, this photo is from tonight. Like, I just bought
Hmm.
this sweater. So, how is this going? Their whole reaction to that to me was like, after finding out his actual role, I was like, ooh, that scene, that freak out feels even more genuine to me now because it's like, that'd be a little twisty thing to throw at him. Dude, the box.
Yeah,
Oh my
that
God.
will just change. Yeah. I know. That's the thing that, well,
But
it's kind of related to the thing I was thinking of. Amir's a really good actor. Like for being just a writer that they kind of plant in there,
yeah.
you wouldn't know it because he does a great job. I specifically love when they come back with the box and he starts to the way he explains, we went to this house, we saw
Yeah.
Hugh, we looked in the window, and I thought I saw him set the box down. And the way he explains that whole sequence is so clear and concise, and I don't know. I love his cadence. I love the way he tells that short story that you really get everything you need to know very efficiently, but it doesn't feel forced or anything. And then, but the acting part that makes me kind of, I'm like, oh, I can't believe you're not like a dedicated, crafted actor, is when Hugh and Amir are like kind of listening to everybody talk and they realize that they're in the wrong house, that something is wrong. And they're like,
yeah.
and when they start talking about the blue things, they're like, yeah, we had the blue ones and they had the red ones. And they're like, try not to react, but also kind of react in their like micro expressions. And I'm like, that's so well done. I love how you did that. But
Yeah.
yeah, the
And that
box.
first time you watch it, you haven't even suspected that stuff yet. The first time you watch it. And then after it's all revealed, like,
Hmm.
oh shit, we're in the wrong one. Their
Hmm.
reactions, everyone's reactions, every time they leave the house and come back in, everyone's reactions post returning, they're all so subtle. they're also well done because at one point or another, everyone has an understanding, except for the two that never leave, has an understanding of like,
Yeah,
oh, I
definitely.
think I fucked up. Like, but the box, the first time they opened the box, so Amir and Hugh come back. Dude, when they opened it and they pull out the ping pong paddle, and then they pull out the photos with the numbers on the back. The moment the photos came out, I'm watching it, that first time, and I was like, oh, I'd be closing that box and like throwing it out the window. I'd be like, there's nothing good coming from this. We need to like,
Yeah.
like this is that moment in a horror movie where the weird sound in the dark basement is getting louder and we need to vacate
Yeah.
the premises. Like, this is not the time for investigation. It's time to leave. But like,
yeah, it's so ominous and so personal for them to find a box full of photos of themselves. And it's just a terrifying device. And I love how it's used in the movie. But to find something as random as a ping pong paddle and then very personal photos of them with ominous numbers on the back
the numbers
is such a scary and unique thing. And I love watching them trying to figure out what it means, because they're they do it the whole movie. They're very practical about their options and trying to figure out like what does this mean? Could it be this? Could it be that? And so you're kind of right there with them. Like, the audience is they're never ahead of the story, and they're never lost or behind the story. You're kind of like right there with them trying to figure it out, like what these numbers mean, and could it be this? Could it be that? And it's never what you really expect until you get there, because I never would have thought that it was just like, it wasn't even meant for them, for one thing, that this just something that they took, that this other house made for themselves to keep as a multi-factor authentication device to be unique. and it's so brilliantly done. And so there's so many things that like overlap each other that I'm like, well, if we talk about the box, then we have to talk about this, and we haven't really even talked about the other house, and we haven't really talked about leaving was the big thing that I was like, okay, the second time I watch this movie, I need to pay extra attention every time someone leaves the house, because that's the thing that like kind of changes everything.
That's what changes everything. That's what throws the wrench in. That's what, how do they describe it, where you're on like a merry-go-round, right? Is that how they describe it? Where you're never going to get off at the same spot.
I think it's like a roulette wheel, yeah.
And or roulette, yeah. And the first time they all decide to leave together, like, first off, okay, so I'm watching this movie, and they're like, Hugh and Amir are like, we're just going to walk down to that other house. It's like 5 minutes back, and we're going to be fine. We're just going to go knock on their window, see if I can use her phone to call my brother. Instantly, I'm like, someone hasn't watched enough movies. You never separate. You never, ever separate in these like situations. Don't do it. But he's like, I'll take a mirror. We're going to be fine. And you're like, God fucking damn it. Don't do it. But when the whole group leaves together, I'm like, shouldn't they be holding hands? Shouldn't they be like, maybe we don't venture out into the night? Again, I find myself, maybe it's my age, because I think if I was in my 20s, I'd be thinking like, fuck that. I'd be headed right out. I think I'd be like Mike, where you're like, you're reacting to it emotionally instead of practically. You know, he's like, I'm going to go kill the other Mike. That's what I have to do. It's either me or him. And they're like, dude, you realize if you're thinking it, he's thinking it, you're going to fight yourself. And he's like, well, maybe that one's drinking. And you're like, oh my God. And all the different versions of you, or possible versions of you, it's not good. But I think in current age, when they all leave the house and decide to walk down the street, I was thinking like, I think if I walked out my front door and everything was shut down, I had lost power, and everything was like extra
Hmm.
dark and extra silent outside,
Hmm.
I'd probably turn right back around, come inside,
And
and
there
be
was
like, okay,
a weird comet in the sky.
yeah, I'd be questioning things a little bit. I'd be like making sure the door is actually locked, deadbolt and all, windows are shut and locked. Like, guess I'm hanging it up tonight. Like, I'd be telling myself, you're gonna go to bed. You're just gonna
Yeah.
like, we're just not gonna interact with the world
Yeah.
until
Fuck this.
I think that's the safest and best way.
This is tomorrow's
But if the
Dustin's
characters
problem.
did that, you wouldn't have a movie. Yeah.
Right.
But,
Yeah, it's
unfortunately,
it's
it's a
it's
movie, so they have to.
it's ominous because they all go outside and then when they come back in, a glass is broken and it didn't fall or anything. And I like thought about that so hard. I was like, does that mean that they're in a different house or what? But then they say later that Beth and Lee never left the house and so they're in the original house. And so I'm like, it must just have broken like the phone screen broke, like just the frequency or some random glass related
Mhm.
thing caused the glass to break. And it's just supposed to like heighten the tension of the whole thing as they all survived coming back from the dark, but there was a weird like casualty, which is the glass, I guess.
Yeah, the first time I watched it, I just kind of chalked up the broken glass to the cell phone, right? Because Hugh's phone also breaks in his
Hmm.
hand. You had Emily's phone break in her hand at the beginning. So I just kind of like, oh,
Hmm.
so random shit just is going to break. And that's where I left it. The second,
Yeah.
all the other times I've watched it, I was like, oh, God. And then I try to figure out, like,
Right.
what happened in this reality that glass got broke? Like, now I'm trying to figure out everyone's situations because they're all going to be kind of similar, but there's going to be differences. There's going to be
Mm.
escalations. And you kind of realize, like,
Differences.
at least one of those timelines is ahead of the others because of the box when Amir first says, like, I thought I
Right.
saw Hugh
That's
put the
the one.
box
That's the team
down.
I want to be on. That's the team I want to be on in the future, is the one that figures shit out immediately and starts putting a plan together and comes up with this super
Right.
complicated and ensuring system. Like 5 minutes into this thing happening, they know what's going on. Like they've got it figured out. That's the team you want to be
Right.
on.
Like, they're the winners. That's probably the house that stayed inside the whole time. Like, the farthest they left
Yeah.
was the front porch. uh,
Hmm.
yeah,
Or they had the worst experience possible and they were forced to, as a survival mechanism, figure it out way earlier.
and yeah, I didn't anticipate that thought, Jake. Ugh. Maybe they ran into their
Because that's
parallel
kind of like
selves
where
very
things go.
fast.
Like, yeah, the more that the group that we're with, and which is really just Emily pretty quickly, the group that we're with, they figure things out more and more as things happen to them, it
Mhm.
seems like, whether it's the red Hugh and Amir coming into their house with the box or leaving with the box in their book or Mike showing up and beating the shit out of himself. Things happen to them and they're like reactive to that of like, oh shit, that must mean this. And so then we need to do this in order to survive the night, basically. And so that's the only reason I
Yeah.
say that is like, if they got that far that fast, shit must have gone down, I think.
or or Hugh read his brother's book, or maybe that Hugh
Maybe
actually contacted his brother.
contacted his brother. That's a great
Yeah,
point,
maybe
actually.
that Hugh
That definitely is the
was
case.
able to
And
contact his brother
that's the thing that I wondered
because he says, my brother said, if any
because
weird thing happens, you need to contact me immediately.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that must be the case. I was wondering this because it's such a great plot device in the movie storytelling world. Like, it's not the most realistic thing, and it adds a lot of questions that are unanswerable. But I think for an enjoyable movie, it works really well. Which is the power goes out, and they see down the street one house has power, and it's all lit up. It's like 2 blocks away. There's only one house that's lit up. Like, there's not 5, 6, or 8 or whatever different realities, like each individual one. There's just one house, and so it's all very one directional as far as kind of what they feel like they need to do. But it does seem like there are different realities where Hugh could have called his brother, or this house actually never lost power, or Mike was a doomsday prepper and had his house a generator on the whole time and they never lost power, or whatever. Like, there are things that could have happened, but you don't. The roulette wheel thing is it's really just a one-way thing. You pass through this dark area, and then you don't really know where you end up when you come out the other side. And I think that's such a great device. And also, they never show you. There's no shot of looking down the street and seeing a house lit up. It's all in your imagination as they talk about kind of what they see out the window, basically. And at first I was frustrated. I was like, I want to see it. What is this house that they're talking about? But it's kind of better that you don't see it, I think.
Well, you do eventually see the house. Well, not eventually. You see it kind of shortly after they because Mike walks up to it, right? Well, they all walk up to it. And it's like, this is my house. And that's really kind of the confirmation of like the suspicion from earlier, where, with Hughes, hey, don't want to freak you out note that keeps getting taped to the door. And they're like, well, now we have 2 notes, with Amir seeing Hugh put the box down in front of the house. And Hugh tries telling him, like, I saw a dinner table set for 8. I saw 8 glasses. And they're like, well, did you see you? No, I didn't see me. Like, when they go and look at the house, the first time when Mike goes and he's looking in the windows and shit, and he keeps saying, like, this is my house. This is my house. I like how they did that, because part of me was very much like, well, show us inside. I want to see the parallel like, let me see what's going on in this house. I want to see. Maybe it's just because, like, I was expecting certain tropes to kind of happen. Like, I was expecting a shot in the window of Mike looking in, and then like Mike looking from inside the house, looking out, to have that like jump. Ooh, God. It never happened, which made me happy. But kind of frustrated at the same time, because everything that I was expecting this small movie to do, it just never did it. And the only time you ever saw all the other realities was with Emily, at the end.
At the very end.
But I was like, and then they're shouting, like, someone's coming. We got to get going. You know what shot that first time I was watching it that just sent like goosebumps all up and down was that scene where they're on the sidewalk group, and you see the red group like standing on the other side of the street, and they're just standing there. I was like, I'd be shitting my pants.
It reminded me of like the first time I saw Invasion of the Body Snatchers as a kid. Like, I'm like, whoa, that's scary. Like, who are these creepy people staring at me that look like me, but they were using different glow sticks? Yeah, it was brilliant and terrifying.
And then they hit that dead sprint, and at first I was like, oh my God, are we gonna get a brawl with? But no, it's like that group is thinking the exact same thing as I am right now, of like, oh fuck, we're not supposed to do this. And you're like, wait a minute.
Let's get out of here.
I really loved that they never tried to show you, like you said, that shot down the street where you'd see the big extra dark spot or the house lit up down the street. I think that was such a great thing to avoid showing, because I think it does more in the head. And you and I talk about that kind of stuff a lot, where less is more. They never try to over complicate the story. They never tried to overshow really anything. I mean, by the time when like the actual reveals start being listed out, it's very quick listing. It's very, you don't really get, you're not given a lot of time to process as an aha moment. You just kind of like, oh my God, like at what point did we lose complete connection? Like, wait a minute, what happened to everybody? Like, it's such a discouraging moment. I feel so bad for Emily.
Yeah, it's I do too. Yeah, it just kind of builds on itself so quickly, and I think because there's so many moving parts with the 8 different people that you don't really notice kind of there's chaos. Like everybody's doing their own thing. I'm going to go take a nap. Someone decides to take a nap. And then someone decides I need to write a note and go blackmail myself. And so that people are in and out, people are doing their own things. And so you kind of lose track of it. Or you're also like, don't know that I need to keep track of it. Like you don't even know what you're supposed to be aware of until it's too late. And you're like, that's so weird. I love how like the whole movie starts out and it's just kind of like, oh, this is a kind of a scary, ominous. When they first get the box, it feels threatening. It feels like it's a threat that they have this box and there's photos of themselves inside. And then when Hugh is writing the note, it's like, hey, I'd really like to use your phone. I don't want to scare you and all this stuff. And then before he even finishes, they get the exact same note on the door. You're like, something weird is really going on. And so maybe it's not what I thought it was. And that's kind of the whole movie. Like as soon as you're like, oh, I think it might do this, it does something else instead. And you're like, I don't feel like I'm falling behind, but I'm also really enjoying keeping up with this movie.
Yeah, I never felt left behind. I mean, you said it really well earlier of like, you are figuring the movie out kind of in real time with the characters. And Emily's really the one that kind of takes action to be like, okay, let's try and figure out some kind of rationality to what is happening to us. When she's looking at the numbers and she realizes it's her handwriting, that was a moment for me of like, oh, what the fuck? Like, how are they going to explain that? Like, what weird, crazy thing is going to happen where she has to number? But it was the numbers themselves that threw, I think, the biggest wrench in that scene, because they're numbered photos and you expect them to be in some kind of succession. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Right. Sequence.
And it's like 1, 1, 5, 2, 7, 6. You're like, well, now I really can't explain this at all. And then when they finally show you how the numbers are picked,
like
you're like, it's so obvious. How did I?
Right.
That's so obvious.
Yeah. It feels random because it is random. Yeah. It's perfect.
Because it's
they do a great thing where they're like, what do all the ones have in common? And they're trying to figure out based on everything they know about themselves and overanalyze it. And it is so simple. It's like, no, we rolled up dice and each person gets a number, and that there's overlap, and nobody got a 3, and it doesn't matter.
That's your number. That was I don't know why,
the
but
fact that all those things happen in such quick sequence, they get the box, they realize that Amir's photo was taken that night, they realize that Emily's handwriting is the one that wrote it, and all of those things happen so fast, and you're like, that's the point where like, this movie's not going to stop being crazy.
the numbers and Amir saying, well, this photo was taken tonight. And they were like, well, you're looking right at the camera and they're looking at the window. So then my brain, because the box does feel threatening, and my brain definitely went the route of like, are they like getting hunted by something? Like, when I saw the numbers on the photos, my brain instantly thought, oh, this is like the order that they're all going to be taken out in. But there was no 3. And I was stuck on that detail. I kept thinking throughout the whole rest of the movie, like, why was number 3 skipped? And I started thinking like, okay, so they're connecting weird comet things. Like, is there some religious factor? It's like, okay, 3s, yeah, there is some like religious numerology, significance there. But I was like, but this movie isn't like that. So what the fuck is going on with 3? And then when you see the next box, which is only the second box that we're shown, but it's like, you feel weird saying it's only the second box. When she's looking at all the numbers and asking people what numbers, hey, do you remember which one you were? I think it's Kevin who says 3. And I was like, no one was 3. Like, no one had 3. And that was another moment for me of like, oh my God.
For me, it was the step before that for me. It was the step before that for me because, well, the second box is brilliant because they realize what's happening and they're like, we need to do something to solve this problem so that we all know that we're in the right place. Yeah. And so they come up with this. They're like, well, it needs to be super random and unrepeatable so that we know we're unique. And so they do it before they even realize they're making the box. They're like, oh, we should put it in a box. And this is what they did. They're way ahead of us, which is brilliant. But then when I think it's Lee, she's like, offhandedly, she's like, I wonder how different that was from the first set of numbers from the other house.
Yeah.
And Emily's like, oh, good thought. I'll go check, and turns the page back on the notebook and it's green. Yeah. And I very specifically remember the marker being red in the beginning. And I'm like, fuck. Like, that's not good. That's really bad.
The green was definitely a trigger for me of like, wait, no. But the 3, dude, when he said 3, my brain lost it. Cause I was like, I felt like Emily in that moment because she really is the first one that
it's what you'd obsessed about.
Yeah, obsessed with it. But she's the one that has maybe complete understanding is the wrong way to put it. But she's the one that has figured this out, and not through her own investigation. Essentially, she's kind of just been like, bitch slept. Like, here's what happened. And she's like shitting her pants at the same time you are. Yeah, so I felt like Emily of just having that worst oh shit feeling possible. Like, and then of course in that same instance, she's talking to Hugh and Hugh's sitting there calculating and he shows his phone and it's not broke. And you're like, literally every single one of you is in the wrong fucking house. Like, at no point are any of you the same that we left with. Like, well, they say Lee is, right? It's Lee and
yeah.
But even
Lee and Beth from the greenhouse because they never left it.
They never left, yeah.
But then everybody else is from a different house. It is from a different house. And then Hugh and Amir are from a third house that they have not interacted with before. And Hugh and Amir are so fascinating because obviously they're the first ones to leave. They come back with the box and Hugh's head is bleeding. And the second and third and fourth time I watched it, I was like picking up on all the little things I need to keep track of. And what you essentially realize are choices. Every possible choice someone can make is a branch in reality, basically.
Yeah.
And so when Lee is like, I have a Band-Aid, do you want cloth or regular Band-Aid? And he's like, I don't care. cloth. And so she slaps it on him. And then you find out that that was the red Hugh and Amir, and they leave. And then real, quote unquote, Hugh and Amir show up, and he has a cloth or a regular Band-Aid on now. And I was like, I didn't even notice that the first time I watched it.
I didn't.
But then you start like picking up on all the little things of what was different in this reality.
Yeah. So many different things to try to like keep up with, all the different reactions, all the different, and Hugh and Amir really are the ones that I found myself kind of wanting to focus on the most, at least that second time watching it, because they're the ones that I feel kind of tip that first domino. They're the ones that start the whole roulette wheel. Yeah. I'm still trying to figure out, why was Hugh bleeding? You never find out. Like at all. No one asks. Well, they do ask, like, what happened? And he's
the second group. Yeah. The first Hugh and Amir that show up, the red ones that come back the first time, they say they don't really want to say what happened, or that Hugh doesn't really want to say what happened. They just say he saw something, he won't say what it is, and then we came back here. But then the second Hugh and Amir that come back, the blue ones that also have red glow sticks because I took it from the other house, and everybody's suspicious of them now. He says that he tripped and fell and hit his head, but then he has the Band-Aid on because they went to the wrong house, and then they left that house like the red ones did, and then they think ended up at the right house, but end up at the greenhouse. And so you're like, okay, there's just three colors. There's red, blue, and green.
But those are only the ones
it all
they
depends
kind of
on who opened which
tell you about.
Box of glow sticks in the beginning.
Yeah. You're essentially told that there's at least three.
And then you realize.
Sorry, go ahead.
Right. And then as they're talking about the notes that Hugh wrote, he's like, well, we wrote a note, and they're in the greenhouse now. This is going to sound crazy to try to explain. They're in the greenhouse at this point, and green or alternate Hugh says, we wrote a note in this house, and we got a note on our door before we could deliver it. So there's two houses. And then Emily's like, well, at our house, the blue house, the original house, red Hugh wrote a note, and we got a note on our door. So there's at least four houses, because there's two houses that are not delivering their notes, and there's two other houses that are getting notes. But then as they're figuring all this out, and as a lot of stuff's going sideways, and we'll need to get into a lot of other things, but Emily decides to leave that house as things are getting crazy, and she finds another note on that door. And that house that already had two notes is getting a third note. And so there's like more and more, like it's just a vicious cycle of more and more things interacting with each other. And it gets complicated the more you think about it. That's what I love about the like thought experiment movies and paradoxes, whether it's Tenet or whatever. It's like there isn't a right answer, but there's a lot of enough clues that you can make a decision about what you think it is.
I think,
and I think that can be satisfying.
I think Coherence does a very satisfying job of presenting a very kind of complicated, kind of scary popular theory of the parallel universes, the multiple universes, without making the audience feel kind of dumb. Now, you and I mean, when we did our Tenet deep dive, I think we were still trying to figure shit out. And Nolan has recently come out and been like, you're not supposed to figure Tenet out. Like, not all of it. So I feel kind of like, okay. I don't have to keep digging. But Tenet goes super quantum, that like kind of turned some audiences off, which is a shame because it's it's too good for its own good. But Coherence, in terms of like
Mhm.
the think test kind of movie, I think they present this theory and this situation in such a unique and frightening way, because you are only really shown at least 3 variations. But Hugh does the calculation and it's like over
Mhm.
5 million or some shit. And that's what freaked me out so bad too, because it was
Mhm.
like, not only are you constantly going to go into the wrong house, but the odds of you ever making it back into your actual reality,
Mhm.
like, you might have a better shot at winning the lottery at this point. Um, but when
Mhm.
they do kind of hint to,
I don't think he was calculating how many different realities there are, because I don't think that's knowable. I think he was calculating how unique their code was.
yeah,
Like,
that's right. Sorry.
if all 8 of them rolled a number and they put a random object in and they used different colored ink on all of their photos, one of 3
Mhm.
possible options or whatever, to match their glow sticks, then you get to 1 in 5 million whatever
Yeah,
chance that it's unique for their house. I mean, there
yeah,
could be,
you're
certainly
right on
could be
that.
that many different realities, but so I think that's what he's calculating.
But yeah, no, you're right on that one. I misspoke that part. But the movie becomes very scary to me with that, because to me, like, the whole parallel universe theory is it's just like the universe, it's never ending. So there is
Hmm.
infinite possibilities. And so this movie, to present
Right.
that kind of scary, very frightening theory, and they even, I think even Emily has that line at one point in the movie where she's like, maybe this is like a good opportunity. Everyone's always talking about, if I could meet another version of myself, this is our chance. And you're like, yeah, that might be cool. But then as you see the movie play out, you're like, that's a bad idea. We should never, ever interact with a parallel self, like, ever. But it's so
Yeah.
frightening as they're like,
Yeah. I thought that was so interesting that, like, Mike is concerned about his other self and becomes very aggressive very quickly, that he's like, we need to kill that other house, like kill all the people there because they're imposters and we're the real ones. And Emily is more hopeful or positive, and she's like, maybe this is a good thing, maybe we could use it to our benefit and
mhm.
all that stuff. I thought that was revealing of her character for sure.
Yeah, revealing, definitely. She kind of goes the wrong way eventually, but she, like,
Yeah.
she
Yeah.
brings up kind of an ethical question that we'll get to here in a little bit. Would it be ethical or would it be more moral?
And it, I mean, it's hard to say. I mean, it's on one side, it's yourself, but on the other side, I mean, that's why it's so scary. And that's, I mean, I am concerned about Mike's perspective, but I also kind of
Yeah.
get Mike's perspective that it's a scary thing to have this whole other world out there, that it's kind of the fear of the other, even though the other is within you, that you don't know if all of these different realities have been going in parallel with each other, untouched by each other forever, then there's so much that could have happened. All of the different
Mhm.
interactions you have, experiences you have, relationships you have, choices you make affect who you are so much, so that this person that is you with the same everything could be extremely different in an alternate reality because of not meeting this one person, or not having this positive relationship, or having this negative relationship, or whatever. And so when Mike is afraid that this other Mike could be drinking or could be violent and could come kill us now, he's kind of just seeing the worst part of himself. And that's a possibility that I could have this dark part rise to the surface. And I don't want that to happen. And so I think it's kind of
Well,
honest of himself to be like, there's a piece of me that could come here and kill all of us, and we need to be concerned about that.
and they do bring up the a pretty well placed, challenging question of everyone is always scared of like the dark version of myself, but what if we are that dark version? And that question, I mean, they present it about midway through the movie. It like, to me, it just kind of overhangs the rest of the movie as you're watching everyone falling apart, and Mike especially. You know, he hints of like, what if other Mike is drinking, and you don't get backstory at all up to that point on him, but you know immediately like, oh, drinking Mike is a bad Mike. But then Mike starts pounding the bottle of wine, and your gut is telling you like, this is wrong. Like, he's either given up or he is that drunk Mike. Like, this is all so wrong. And I think you watch everyone kind of like inadvertently turn into the dark version of themselves, just with how they let the stress and the emotions of the whole thing and all the revelations kind of take control of them. They lose rationale, and even Emily loses rationale. Like, she totally ends up leaning into it, which is a shame, because she's like, you're one, like, I have stuck with you. You are my constant. And then you're like, oh, fuck. and
yeah, you do feel like you could be better.
I would be lying, Jake, if I didn't say this. When they presented the like, what if we're the dark versions of ourselves, it was a split second. Very split second. It didn't take me out of the movie. It didn't ruin anything for me. But for a split second, I heard Abed from Community, and I saw Dark Timeline Abed and Dark Timeline Jeff Winger. It was like, oh god.
Goatee.
Yeah.
You gotta have a goatee.
Quick little scan of all the characters. Who has a goatee suddenly up here? Nope. All right. Clean faces. For people that didn't get that reference, I'm sorry.
It's very true. You watch Community.
Yeah, you need to go watch Community. Do yourself that favor. I already brought that note up.
That's the fact that Mike decides to blackmail himself and not, and also the fact that most of the group knows that he slept with Beth like 12 years ago is a little bit suspicious, but that he decides to use that as like a way to keep the other Mike in his house. He's like, if I tell him that I will blackmail him if he goes to find the book, then that's the way to do it, which is kind of a good idea, to blackmail yourself. Like, you know all of your deepest, darkest secrets, that you should be very efficient at keeping yourself at bay. Although he's not efficient, because he, at least the greenhouse Mike, gets not only gets the blackmail note on his door, but also gets another version of Mike busting it down and beating his ass.
Like, beats him down.
Yeah.
Kind of makes you wonder, like, was that the first initial Mike that was making the threats of, I need to just go over there and kill that other Mike? Is that one of those timeline Mikes that decided to do that, to just burst into the house and do that? I disagree with you on blackmailing yourself being a good idea.
Okay.
Because
okay,
by the time he has presented the idea of blackmailing himself, they've already kind of hinted towards other versions of you doing slightly different things. So that it's all alternate, different decisions, like you brought up earlier, choices. And I feel like trying to blackmail yourself, you are putting a lot of assumption and kind of trust that there is only that one other version of you and that you can control your own shit. But by the time Mike has come up with this idea of blackmailing, we've already seen this group unravel. Whatever group it is that we're with, this mixed group, they've already started unraveling here and there. You know, they're losing their emotions. They jump on Beth at one point, trying to like blame her for drugging everyone's food, or at least kind of questioning her if she would have done that. And she's like, hell no, I wouldn't do that. How dare you? But like the group has already kind of started turning against each other and themselves. I feel like trying to blackmail
I read that
as
as more hopeful, as like they're hopeful that that's true. That if she did drug them, that would be great.
That would be
just
great,
tripping and everything's fine, and there's not a weird thing happening.
They're like, please let this be a hallucination. No, it's not. But yeah, I just feel like trying to blackmail yourself with something like that, I think has good intention to it, but it's not smart because you never actually know how you're going to emotionally react, especially in a high stress situation, and especially like an alternate version of you. So I don't think it's that good of a decision. And obviously, as the movie plays out, you find out like, yeah, that was a terrible choice, Mike. Terrible choice. But there's no going back now, dude. You just got to hope one of the realities is okay with it, which one of them like is able to have a civil conversation. But too bad Emily doesn't get to be a part of it.
There's the one. That's true. There's the main, like, I guess, question that the movie I felt made me ask of myself, and I wanted to get your take on it, is particularly around this time in the movie when Mike is kind of realizing and everybody's realizing they're all in different houses and they're getting freaked out by that fact. In my mind, I'm like, they're all still your friends. They're all still the people you know, have had a long relationship with. And so they get, when they realize that, or at least certain people get very freaked out by the fact that they're not where they're supposed to be. And I think if you dwell too much on that thought, it can drive you crazy and make you do crazy things, irrational things, things like that. Or you can be like Mike and be like, whatever, like, who cares? I'm here. And you can have kind of a take to it, which is that things are basically the same. It only matters as much as you make it matter in your mind, almost, in a way. Like, there are certainly, which you then find later, there are timelines where they have terrible relationships with each other, or timelines where Emily's not even with Kevin and she wishes she was with Kevin and all that stuff. But at least on the surface, and at least up until that point, I was like, who would I be? Would I be comfortable that wherever I'm at and just make the best of it? And like, because they're worried that they'll get stuck there. They're worried they'll get stuck in that reality and it's not where they're supposed to be. And if that happens, you could dwell on that fact and be super hyper focused on it and see all these people as different people, or you could see them as the same people, your friends, and be okay with being in that different place. And I'm not sure which one I would be. I know which one I would like to be, but I worry that the more you think about it, you would go crazy about it.
I felt challenged by that question too. It's a tough one to answer. I think everyone automatically wants to jump on the train of like, oh, I would make the best of it and just accept my fate. I think there's a difference between being forced to accept that kind of fate and choosing to accept that kind of fate. the movie presents it as you are forced. Like,
Fair.
this was, I mean, you made the choice to leave the house. So on a basic level, this is your choice. But at the same time, like, you are stuck in whatever reality you are winding up in. The comet is only shooting overhead for a short period of time. Me personally, yeah, it is tough. I really want to believe that I would kind of have to make amends and be like, I'm gonna have to figure out how to make this work. But I think I honestly would struggle so fucking hard because you make the kind of connections that we make with each other are, if they're healthy, you know, they're deep. We tend to know each other inside and out. We've seen each other bad days, good days, yada yada. We've shared all these different moments throughout life that we are personally connected to. And I feel like there would always be a very deep separation there, even if you were like, I know you're essentially the same dude and the memories are there, but they're always going to be a little skewed, most likely. And I think that's where the disconnect would always be, because you never feel like you could actually reconnect or have that kind of relationship with your friends or family ever again. So I think I would be driven crazy and would not handle being stuck in an alternate reality. Of course, by the time this movie ended, I found myself like, we haven't accidentally like slipped into one of these realities, have we? Like,
yeah, it makes you question yourself.
It did, man. Okay, no shit. This was weird. No shit. I know I just got done saying like 20 minutes ago that I would turn back inside and like call it a night, but it was, let's see, at the time of recording, it was about 3 weeks ago. I was leaving for work and literally it was like silent.
Okay.
I couldn't hear the traffic on the road that's like right over here. There was you couldn't hear cars passing by, which even at, 5:45 in the morning, there's not a lot of traffic, but there's still traffic. There was like no traffic. I got on the highway. It was me and like 2 other cars, which was weird. I got to work. It was just like a weird, ominous quiet. And I'm like, the day felt weird. The whole day ended up feeling weird. Me and a couple coworkers towards the end of the day were both like, so today feels like odd, right? And I told them about the morning being like oddly quiet and just, I guess it was technically kind of serene. Like, it was nice. It wasn't busy. And maybe that's telling of the kind of like conditioning that we're used to, where we're like, no, we need commotion all the time. Otherwise we think things are wrong. But I had recently watched this shit. And so my brain was still very much like, what if? And so I was definitely like eyeballing people like, okay, everything is still, I mean, this is normal, but the morning was weird, dude. It was so fucking weird.
Something is slightly different.
Right. Luckily, I didn't see any extra dark spots in the middle of the road. I didn't near anything that was like, this seems ominous and dangerous. So I felt like, okay, I'm still in my world, but the morning felt weird, dude. I'm not going to lie. It felt fucking weird. I almost texted you, but got distracted by work. Good. Yeah. That's my story. Hopefully we didn't slip into an alternate reality.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
fucking movie.
Well, even if we did, I'll still be your friend.
Oh,
so it'll be okay.
And we're still doing the show, so I guess we got one constant. and I
That's
still
true.
have the
That's
belt,
true.
so
Yeah,
nothing
it's such
has
an
changed too
interesting
much.
idea. Oh, fuck. I wish I slipped into a different reality where I had the belt.
Wow.
It's such an interesting idea where these I guess the concept of the movie, everybody knows about Schrodinger's cat and how according to quantum physics the cat is both alive and dead at the same time, but I had never heard of decoherence as a concept, and so that was, I guess, part of the fun, is learning, assuming that the movie presents it interestingly or accurately, the fact that these timelines, when they're split, remain split and continue on, and because of some cosmic decoherent thing can't ever interact with each other. But then the more I was thinking about it, the movie's not called decoherence, it's called coherence. So these things come together and cohere with each other, and also it's about all of these different people interacting and kind of forcing, like, the choices that they make are not just choices that split their options or split their timelines based on the two different outcomes that could have been. The choices that they make are ones that directly try to affect the other timelines. The first thing that they do is like, we need to take their box. We need to go and stop them from getting this book. We need to go, like, give them a note. We need to go open their door and punch them in the face. Like, they're actively trying to cohere with themselves, which is, I think, what makes it such an interesting story.
Yeah, especially since they have read like the law of physics or whatever it is. It's like, you can't do this. Don't do this. It's bad.
Mm-hmm.
Don't do it. And they do spend the entire night actively attacking in some form, whether it's, just notes on a door. Either way, they're like constantly going against this law of physics, and it never works out. And it's great. The Schrodinger's cat. And it was funny watching this because, like, I had just rewatched Oppenheimer, and they talk about the cat in that. And, like, I watched another. Can't remember if it was a show or another movie that brought it up again, and I was like, man, everyone's talking about this. Oh, it was just remembered. So I had rewatched The Big Bang Theory because I never finished it when it was airing, and it worked as good background noise just to watch. But they bring that freaking cat up a handful of times, and then watching Coherence, watching off, I was like, this cat got really popular again. Probably because it's such a weird concept of, like, until you have confirmation on one or the other, then both possibilities are constantly happening and probable. And to, like, include that into this idea of the parallel universes or decoherence or the coherent, like when Mike is saying, so we're the freaking cat, like, it's a scary concept to me all of a sudden. That never really, I always thought it was a cool.
So we're the cat, or we're in the box? The house is the box?
Yeah.
Trying to figure it out.
It's all screwy. Good job, dinner party guests. You fucked it all up. You just couldn't stay inside.
Quantum physics is, like, trippy. Like, you can quickly get to a place where nothing makes sense. Have you ever heard of the double slit experiment?
What? No.
So it's like this thing where it's an experiment that's done, and it's basically, the premise is that they've actually tried to test this, and it's this thing where if you shoot a like a wave of different particles through these two slits. Like there's these two slits cut into a divider or wall or whatever. Then the particles will go through and they'll form a pattern as you would expect on the wall behind it, and everything will behave basically how you expect. But only when you're observing it. When you're not observing it, then the particles act completely differently and do something completely different and behave completely differently. And you Google it, watch YouTube videos on it. It's crazy that the exact same experiment, the exact same motion, the exact same action, the exact same cause has different effects depending on if somebody is observing it or not. And so that you as an observer actually, by observing it, are interacting with it. It's a crazy thing that's out there that they're trying to figure out. And I think it's the same kind of thing. They're all theories. Nobody really knows. And so that's why I think the movie Coherence is so interesting, because it's a very unique possibility or a unique opportunity to test something that people have like postulated theories about. Maybe it's Schrodinger's cat, maybe it's decoherence and all of these different things. Maybe it's some other thing that nobody can even figure out and will never figure out because it's impossible to actually test until this one night and this weird window opens between the different lanes of reality. And I think that's why it's so fascinating to me.
I had to look up because Emily does bring up a few instances involving comets, and knowing that the movie talks about science and this like coherence and stuff, I was curious. So I was like, okay, let's look up this Finland one.
I didn't do that
because it's so specific. I need to know. The Finland story is fake. It was made up for the movie. It's not a real instance. So I was like, oh, okay. When I read that, I was like, okay, well, I probably don't need to even bother. And then I scroll down, and it turns out the Siberia meteor that she talks about was very real. 3 people died on that, which there was like no one living there. So the 3 people is like horrible, obviously. And in 1908, but it was one that the way it like scorched and flattened the trees, that's what still has people kind of baffled with how that effect happened. And then I was like, I was all prepared, dude.
How close
I literally
did it
looked
get,
up weird experiences during meteor showers or comets. I didn't find a whole lot of weird things directly involved to them. Instead, the rabbit hole was literally just strange phenomenon all over the place. Had nothing to do with comets or anything. It did talk about comets and how they break up when they near Earth. They shatter into the atmosphere and burn up, and how there's constantly like little meteorites pummeling us, which is always such a warm and fuzzy feeling knowing we're constantly getting berated by space rocks. But I lucked out and did not fall down a frightening rabbit hole
barely
that
protected
I was
by the atmosphere.
Actively looking for. That was nice. But I did think it was interesting that the 2 stories that she talks about, one of them was real and not as weird as I was kind of expecting it to be. But the Finland one, fake. And I was like, oh, okay. So that was such a purposeful foreshadowing for what was going to be happening. But I'll tell you what, man, there's folks, if you ever want to quickly fall down a rabbit hole that involves weird supernatural events.
Did you say a rabbit hole?
Did I? I thought I said hole. Hole.
Okay. I didn't know that was one of those things that some people like think that go their whole lives thinking that's the expression. I'm
rabbit
like, maybe
hole.
this rabbit does have
Did
a
I
hole,
say hole?
and I've been saying it wrong the whole time.
I lost my train of thought. You totally. Oh yeah, if you want to follow down that rabbit hole, there are some weird stories out there just in general, but then there's some like weird comet stuff and space stories. I found a story of some satellite that we launched. I forget what year, but they finally found a photo of it. It like got lodged upside down inside a meteor and is still just flying around. I thought that was kind of like, well, that's fun. No wonder we don't have a space program. We just crash it literally into stuff. So cool.
Yeah.
But anyways, Coherence is a crazy movie.
Yeah. I don't know what else we missed talking about besides the very end. Is there anything else we needed to cover?
Besides the ending, I think we can get to the end because as Emily has kind of like revealed to the whole group that they are all different versions, other Mike has shown up and beat the shit out of other Mike. So other Mike, some other Mike has beat the shit out of other Mike. Emily does this thing, like, because they've talked about you're on a roulette wheel, you're not going to find your timeline. You could go through the dark spot however many times, you're not going to find it, especially by the time the comet passes over. So when she leaves and just starts like checking out all the timelines, at first I was like, man, this movie just took a super depressing turn. Because I thought she was just going like on this journey of look at how much better these other versions of me have it. And of course she sees like a lot of arguing, fighting. The one that freaked me out is the house where she looks in the window and Hugh and Amir are tied up to the chairs.
I thought it's two different mics are tied up in the chairs.
Is it two mics?
There's a
I thought it was
green
Amir
mic and a red mic.
Yeah.
No,
the
mics
mics are tied up. I was
and they're
like,
both wearing the same shirt.
Yeah, like that's jacked, but it goes in line with there's every possible version is out there. But she
they like basically decide to take them prisoner, which is kind of scary.
Kind of scary. Like, what are you gonna do with them? Like, but she presents kind of a challenging question to me because I don't know how to feel about it. When she hijacks a timeline, like a happy timeline with Kevin, I feel bad for that Emily, but at the same time, the Emily we've been watching is kind of like she's our, I don't want to call her our hero, but she's the one that we've been with this whole time, that we're rooting for this whole time. And then she does this thing so that she can have a future. And I've really been trying to like wrap my head around the idea of, would I not only be willing to, but be able to hijack like an alternate timeline? Like, would I be able to do that to a different version of myself? Let alone a clearly happy version
I think,
of myself.
Yeah. I think even if you would never do that to someone else, like you wouldn't ever steal someone else's life because like you that's kind of it's a selfish move to take somebody else's life for your own. It's different enough that you feel kind of entitled to their life. You're like, they're me. And so it's kind of my life in a way. And so you feel, I think, a little more entitled to what should have been or what you deserve, what could have been for you. And so it's an interesting thought experiment for sure. And I kind of am like, I don't know her. Like if I'm her, I'm like, I don't know that guy. And so I would rather, I know me and I like me. And so I want the best for me and I'm going to do whatever I can to achieve it. The problem is all other versions of me are also doing that same thing. So it's a double-edged sword.
Double-edged sword. But see, you're just kind of like expanding that challenge. At least to me, you are, which is a good thing, because I totally get the
Yeah.
idea of like you feel entitled to alternate version you's life because they're essentially you, but there's like an asterisk to it, right? There's like they're you, but they're not, because things are going to be just slightly different enough that that's their life. They are someone else essentially. So essentially, you hijacking that is still doing that super selfish and horrible kind of act. So to me, it's like, what a fucking conundrum and paradox. And then I kind of can't help but think like, well, duh, it's a paradox. Like the whole movie has been challenging you with with all these paradoxes. Her clubbing herself with the fucking toilet or the toilet, the top, like, man.
Yeah, she tries to be nice about it, to her credit. She tries to just drug herself and then slip into her life in as nice a way as possible. But yeah, she doesn't go that way. She starts to come to and put up a fight, and good for her. She clubs the shit out of her face with that lid.
I've been trying to wrap my head around, how would you react? Because I love the final shot of the movie where they're outside at her car. It's all sunny and daylight. It's all pretty again. And she's like, I don't know where the other me disappeared to, because she wasn't in the bathroom like she was supposed to be where I left her, but no one's freaking out. So what happened to her?
Mm-hmm.
And when her and Kevin are talking and he's like, oh, weird, it's you. And the look he gives her and her like look back at him. I love that. I love that to be the final shot, because it's such a like, ew. Like, oh no. Like, you may have just made things exponentially worse.
Yeah, and you're immediately sad because you didn't get away with it, and you thought that you might. But yeah, now it's like, where do you go from here? Is this completely ruined? It's kind of like, I mean, there's that old, I don't know what it is, but the old like doppelganger thing. Like, if you ever come into contact with yourself or see yourself, that's a bad thing. That means you're going to die or whatever. And there are things that happen in the movie, particularly I think when the timelines cohere the most, like when one Mike tells another timeline's Hugh that he slept with his wife and all of that stuff, then Beth's nose starts bleeding. Like, they affected their timelines or selves the most physically. And so to think it's the next day and you thought everything would kind of reset, but this other Emily is still out there, and she just called Kevin to tell her that some crazy bitch that looks like me just tried to kill me last night and stole my ring. Where do you go from there? Like, that's a deeply affecting change. And also, the door's closed. There's no way to go back now. Now you are fucked.
Yeah, you are completely stuck. And it also got me thinking, she never runs into some other version of herself wandering around the timelines. You know, she seems to be just kind of alone. So it does make me wonder if her original timeline, the one that she started in, that we started with her in, where her phone was broken in the car.
Right.
I can't help but wonder, does that timeline now no longer have an Emily in it? Is there one timeline, at least one timeline, where she is
Right.
completely out?
That she
How
wasn't
does that
replaced
timeline
by a
react
different
and
Emily.
respond? Yeah. How do
Yeah.
you like? How would you
Yeah. Yeah.
react to that? How would you explain that? Like,
Yeah. It would become like
science.
the timeline where Kevin and Lori are like together and Emily's not because she
Right.
disappeared or whatever. I really like this movie because I think the characters are so grounded. Like the motivations are clear and pure, I guess, in a way that Emily's motivated
Mhm.
by, I guess, the an inability to commit, but also fear of missing out because of that problem. That she had the whole thing with the dance company, and she didn't want to be the understudy, and so, but then that understudy became famous, and so Lori even says that famous dancer has your life. You should have had that, and so she kind of feels like she missed it, and then she doesn't want to commit to Kevin going on his business trip for 4 months or whatever, and and Kevin's like, if you don't decide, it's a no because we have a timeline on this kind of thing. And so
Right.
that, I think, just that basic detail sets up why she makes a decision to take the
Oh
risk,
yeah.
go out, try to find a timeline that fits her needs. And then same with Hugh. Hugh's like, I just need to contact my brother if something weird happens. And that kind of drives the whole story. And everybody kind of has their little thing. And it is a clear driving force for their character and for the whole story. And I love that.
Yeah, I think the writing, for a lack of actual script, but the writing for the direction that the story needed to go in, where it needed to end up in, the way that the cast developed their characters, made the characters, and were able to interact. The movie is so well done, and it's shot so interesting because you're never far away. You know, we talked about it at the start where you're
Mm-hmm.
constantly part of it. You're always right on someone's shoulder or right in the, at the table or in the kitchen with them. And every room is small.
Mm-hmm.
So you're always close quarters. It's such an interesting movie. I keep trying to think back, like, did I ever know that this movie was existing in 2013 and just like
Mm-hmm.
ignored it? Or did they just not advertise this thing at all? It doesn't really matter. It was 10 years going on 11
Mm-hmm.
years ago, but I think it's genuinely one of the most interesting, kind of scary and original films I think I've seen in a long time, dude. The movie is
Mm-hmm.
absolutely incredible to me. For such a tiny, low budget,
Yeah.
filmed in the director's heart in his house. I almost said heart. I did. They used all the cars. That's the actors' actual cars. Like there was no real costuming. This was such a like. I love group effort films like this. It's the
Yeah.
movie works. It's so well done. It's one that I'm going to be watching this movie for a long time. It's going to be on that list where I like bother people with it because it deserves a big audience. It really does.
Yeah. 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 It really, really does. I think that so many people will like it and so many people can get so much out of it. And it's fascinating on the science end, but it also kind of does the Christopher Nolan thing where it just feels right. Like it feels real. And so
Mhm.
you are completely willing to go wherever the movie takes you. And yeah, I I love it. I'm so glad you love it. I hope listeners love it. Definitely let us know if you didn't or do or have other theories or have other thoughts, because there's a lot to this movie.
There's so much. We didn't get to all of it, but that's okay. It's a movie that it needs wider audience and it needs more conversations about it because it's just such a fun movie. And I'm telling you, like, I know we see a ton of sequels. I mean, you and I made the joke when we did our draft for this year, and I think I think your mom actually also commented on this of like 2024 seems to be the year of sequel. It's so many part 2s or part 3s coming out this year. And it's true. Hollywood is pretty saturated with sequels. So go find movies like this. If you're tired of seeing the sequels, maybe take a shot on some of those smaller films that you don't hear too much about. Because you and I have had a lot, not just this or Empty Man, but a lot of movies that didn't seem to have a lot of marketing that I feel we have come out of it being like, holy shit, this was great. Like, we really liked this.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
it's true.
I think that's like, if you don't want to find something sciencey to take away from this, as a movie fan, I think we should be trying to find more movies maybe that don't get the marketing or the mainstream treatment. Not saying go art house because just don't. But but these movies like this deserve the audience. So that's my encouragement. Go watch movies like this because they're
it's so good.
Be surprised.
I feel bad not finding it until 11 years later. I wish that I found it in 2013 when it came out and could tell everybody to go see it. And I don't even know if it had a theatrical run or what its full story was because it's been so long. But I'm sure there are movies coming out this year that kind of fit this same bill that would be worthwhile to find and support. And I totally agree on all fronts.
Yeah. I think it's important. As movie fans, I think we kind of owe it to movies like this to seek them out and give them a shot. We might be pleasantly surprised. So that was really all I had. Did you have anything else you wanted to?
100%. No, I think that should do it. So thanks everybody.
Yep. Thank you.
Go make sure you watch The Fog. Very important. Celebrate Fog Day. Dress up like a pirate and avoid getting murdered. And very excited for Fog Day. And also, of course, let us know what you thought about Coherence and everything about it, or any other movies like it. If there's anything small and interesting that you want us to check out, let us know that as well, because we'd love to do an episode on it for sure.
Yeah, 100%. We appreciate everyone. Thank you again. Go get some cool swag, and we look forward to our first annual Fog Day.
Fog Day. All right, everybody. We'll see you next time.
All right. Thank you, everybody.